Coming up, Doug and I break down the 3 holiday gifts that we want this season for the Brooklyn Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, friends, it is the holiday edition of the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Right back over there is Doug Norrie, owner-operator of DFSR. For all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel, he's got you covered. I'm Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast. My boy, Andy Mack, we thank you for making us your first listen of the day, free on all those great platforms, and tell you that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And Doug, before we dive in on the 3 things that we're thankful for, the 3 gifts we want under the proverbial tree, go ahead and take a little lap here on last night's game, man, because that's the kind of thing that really great Brooklyn Nets seasons are made of.
Oh man, I know you rolled it solo yesterday. It was a bummer too because it was a pre-planned scheduling thing that didn't have me on the podcast yesterday, doing some other stuff. But it's one of those ones that you're just like, oh my God, should I just make time to get on this podcast? Like, should I stop my plans? Because this is the kind of game where you're like, I know I wasn't going to do it, but this might be where I just tell everyone else, like, I have to go. Like, I have to go. I'm watching this thing. It's unbelievable. They cannot miss. They look like the best version of themselves. Kyrie's not even there. It's not an indictment of Kyrie. It's like it's a testament to how good this team really can be. Yeah. And we're going to talk about this even when they're all firing on all cylinders. But last night's game against the Warriors, depending on when you listen to this, the game against the Warriors it's a depleted team. I don't even want to throw an asterisk on it. When you drop 143 points and you drop like 91 in the first half, I don't care if you're playing against like a D1 school. Like, that's hard to do. That's really
against
hard.
The Harlem Globetrotters.
It's right. It's like, it's just hard. It's very hard to do. And so I can't even hear the depleted part of it. Yeah, because it's just, there was 5 other NBA players running up and down the court across the court from you. Right. And you hung 91 in the first half and 143 on them in the whole game. And we'll talk about like what that game kind of in some ways means, but yeah, no, that's just, it's a great performance. I'll put it this way. And before we get into it, yep. I had other people in my life who are like sort of tangential basketball fans sending me like the side eye emoji with the Nets when they were just absolutely hanging one on them. So it was kind of a statement thing.
Courtney, my obviously partner and live-in lover, as everyone on the podcast knows, is her heart is in San Francisco. She loves the Warriors. So I went ahead, just poked my head in at halftime and said, hey, you're down by 40. And then I closed the door. The bottom line is, though, if you call that game the stocking stuffer, right? There's this little tiny free treat you didn't even see coming. We talked about, like, what are the 3 gifts that you would want to get from the Brooklyn Nets, maybe essentially going the rest of this season. And as we talked about this coming in, it was universal. The very first thing we want, and we've gotten kind of a pretty solid sample size here in recent weeks, health. What else could you want for this team, Doug, than to remain healthy, starting at the very, very top with Kevin Durant, who has been exactly that all season long?
Okay, so going forward, if we're going to put something, depending on whatever holiday you celebrate here, you're going to give a gift or two.
What are you lighting the menorah for?
Yeah, wanting to get health for this team is just the number one factor. It's the number one factor for all teams for sure, but it's been something that's been particularly problematic for the Nets over the last couple seasons. Yeah. And sure, they've gotten into their way a little bit, too, with just player availability and stuff. But in general, you would say health has been the thing. Even Steve Kerr mentioned it, and I know people took Kerr's comments pregame about Vaughn just being like, they thought it was a slight against Vaughn, that it was like, oh, it wasn't him doing a good job. It was just they all got healthy. I don't think he really meant it like that, but it's a testament to the understanding that, hey, when you have a fully built team and they're all healthy, you can realize like the highest sort of upside of your potential, right? Like that's just the goal of every team to start, is just to keep everyone healthy and see if what you built is going to work. I think we've seen, at least in limited sample sizes, that when everyone is fully healthy and they can run, they have 2 things. They have actually pretty high top end roster, right? Like whenever you have Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Simmons, who's starting more and more to look like Simmons again.
Mm-hmm.
When you have those three guys, you have a lot of upside. But also we've seen that Marks has built a team that is really deep here too when everyone's healthy, and deep to the point of it's kind of maybe hard to find playing time for all these guys that maybe deserve playing time. So I think if they can continue on like this, we are going to see, and but I mean by this, I mean healthy. I think, and this without Kyrie, I think we are going to see more games like the one against the Warriors. We talked about this a lot, man, where you're like, hey, if they can just get everything sort of clicking at once, like everyone just has a night, an on shooting night, and guys that are just in their range of outcomes doing things we can expect them to do, they're going to have 30-point blowouts in their range. Like, and we saw it. Like, this was a very good example of when you're all rolling, this team has, at least for regular season, like really high regular season upside.
Yeah, I talked about this on the post game over on YouTube, obviously, and on the podcast feed of just the wave after wave that they were able to have last night in that game against Golden State. That was that little sample size to your point about if they're healthy, right? You have 22 combined points from Patty Mills and Markieff Morris, and absolutely garbage time in this one, and they're capable of doing that. And we know the limitations around some of these players as you get down the roster, but they're there. They exist. You could tap into those guys for a minute share, for a 10 to 15 point performance on a random night, and you haven't had to. And, TJ Warren getting his legs underneath him, Yuta Watanabe coming back here. The start of that game against the Warriors is just being kind of obviously, that's going to be the symbolic win here until the next big one. When you have Royce O'Neal and Joe Harris combining 7 out of their first 8 shots from beyond the arc, right? And then 8 out of 9, like, those things start to give you this idea of if they can stay healthy, there's the world where as guys come in off the bench, it doesn't change what the concerns are for opposing defenses. You get a little bit longer, maybe you get a little bit smaller, but guess what? Around Kevin Durant, Kyrie, and Ben Simmons, like you mentioned, it's just going to be these players that have their identified role, something that Jacque Vaughn seems to be doing a fantastic job of, and they come in ready to serve that role behind the stars. Again, knock on wood and every other thing that you can find that matters. If this team stays healthy, now consistency comes into play. And that's what we've never had for this team over the last 3 years.
Yeah, the consistency has always been an issue. Even this, honestly, even this season, it's not like, I know we're getting it sort of rounding back into shape, and it's hilarious we're even talking about this after a game that Kyrie was late scratched, because it's easier to talk about it this way because they blew the doors off the Warriors. Yeah. And we're just kind of glossing over the fact that, like, hey, their second best player was a late scratch because of with tightness in the leg. So, but if you look at the roster, just how it's been, because the health even this year, even though we're in a very, very feel good part of the season for the Nets for sure, like they just have, winning a ton of games, and even in, like they said, like in blowout fashion, only 3 players in this team have been available for more than 75% of the games this season. 3 players total. It's Durant has played in 31 of the 32 games. Royce has played in 30 of the 32 games. And then there's 4 guys. Nick Claxton and then Joe Harris. Everyone else, it's 4 guys. Everyone else has not been available for extended stretches. No one else has been available for more than 22 games after that. So this
is health by our standards, by net standards. This has been a very healthy start to the season, and you're still waiting for guys to really get into it.
Totally, because look, the Kyrie thing wasn't health, right? That wasn't health. It was, he was suspended, so it's not like he missed games. It's not because he was unhealthy, was injured or anything. There was other issues that went on there. But like, yeah, for Simmons, for Yuta, for these guys, with Seth, like these guys have not been healthy this whole season so far, right? At least consistently. And in some ways, maybe we already would say, well, we've gotten the gift already because Durant has been the epitome of health. Yeah. Like he's been healthy and beyond because the minutes are so outrageous. But I think we're even starting to see that when the rest of the team can be healthy, actually the Nets have the ability to save him more, right? Like they were able to sit him against the Pacers. They were able to get him off the court against the Warriors with only 29 minutes. And he probably could have even played fewer than that. I think they like to kind of keep the minutes around 30 just for, conditioning and stuff. But in general, like the hope here is during the stretch is that they're going to see when they go through a weaker part of their schedule, that we're going to see that health compound by 1, getting them healthier as a team, and 2, the health maybe pays dividends down the road and be able to help Durant maintain his health by playing less.
Yeah, and so Doug touched on something there. The first gift that we got is the health. That's what we want underneath the tree. The second one might actually be off the court, but we'll also talk about maybe a gift we were hoping for coming into the season. next here as we look ahead to those Christmas Day matchups. But first, friends, it is the holiday season. And you might not know this, but did you know that driving underneath the influence of marijuana is illegal? It's legal to have it, just like it is to have drinks, but just like drinking, it's illegal to get behind the wheel of the car. Driving high could get you a DUI. And if you're wondering, could the law enforcement detect if you have been driving high? Well, guess what? Everybody else knows when you're high, right? Your family and your friends, whatever you're doing in your free time, they're aware that you're high, and that's fine unless you get behind the wheel of a car. And that is why law enforcement is cracking down on driving illegal. You can get a DUI if you're driving underneath the influence of marijuana. Drive high, get a DUI paid for by the NHTSA. Okay, so I do want to touch on, I think, what is another gift that I'd like to see underneath the tree going forward for the Brooklyn Nets. But the one we probably both would have loved to have gotten is a Christmas Day matchup for the Brooklyn Nets. And we bring this up because there was just a little article here that we caught over on Daily News where they were discussing with Kevin Durant the opportunity of playing on Christmas Day. And he mentioned specifically talking about the crosstown Knicks. Yeah, Kevin Durant said Knicks-Nets would have been a great Christmas Day matchup. There are probably some people, especially with how the Knicks are playing and the way that we're playing right now, I feel like that would be the perfect matchup on Christmas. And then went on to say, hopefully we'll get those going forward. But yeah, I'm probably responsible for us not playing on Christmas with what went on this summer. But hey, it is what it is. We play on the 26th. That's close enough.
Yeah, I joked last night during the game that if the Nets got to 150, they should just cancel the Golden State Christmas game because it's just so it's just so embarrassing.
Right.
They
Where's the
didn't get
NFL style flex? We're gonna flex.
Yeah, they got to
schedule here.
143, so we didn't have to really kind of go, take it to the league and decide if we could just have them replace the Warriors, this depleted Warriors team when they play the Mavericks. Oh, excuse me, when they play the Grizzlies on Christmas. Yeah, but Christmas that day is just the NBA has come to own the day. They want to usually highlight the best superstars and teams and biggest draws. Brooklyn has been there in the past since they got Kyrie and KD because it's just those guys are among the most popular NBA players there are, and you want to, and they're, and the best ones too. So you want to be able to feature them. We do get Philly and New York. Fine. The Knicks actually are always there no matter where the state of their team is. So congrats, MSG folks. But then you get the Lakers and Dallas. No Anthony Davis. Luke is going to play. You get Milwaukee and Boston. That's a good one. Memphis fully healthy, but then Golden State, we just saw how they're rolling. And then you get Phoenix and Denver pretty healthy. So mostly the Christmas slate. It's hard to complain too much with how it kind of lands. And
go look at the NFL Christmas Day slate and see how you feel about that one.
I'm sure the league, it was one of these like just brutal timing things with when Durant did, because this is why they had less. This is why they have less national games too, right? In general, right. It's just because right around the time of the schedule making is when it was very unclear of what the Nets were going to be this season, and at that point, it is hard to pull the trigger and put them on. And I'm torn because it's super fun watching them on Christmas, and I don't know, don't mind taking the day and just
I don't hate
and not doing it too. So I go either way with that one.
For sure. But so when we then the other thing for me was something else that again, the theme of gifts under the holiday tree umbrella, whatever you want to do, is the off court. You mentioned the Kyrie Irving. This isn't even Kyrie specific. It's just team specific. It's don't have anything unrelated to basketball come up. You've had this beautiful stretch. Once Kyrie Irving got back on the court after the suspension, it's just been about getting healthy, finding rhythm, continuity, feeling good about the team, and being able to sit down, watch, and enjoy basketball games. I just talked with Peter Bukowski about this, of from where we came from in the offseason to where we are now. I mean, you could almost pinch me and say you're going to wake up from this dream you've been underneath for the last 3 weeks. Do not have anything else come up other than, is this team going to be a basketball powerhouse when it comes to the playoffs? I swear to God, if I get one dramatic moment off the court from this team, I might have a meltdown.
It's funny about this, and I hate that we have to talk about this, but we do. There's been too many examples over the years of just having this stuff get in the way of what has been happening on the court, and we just have too many examples, too many players. It's not one guy. It's been a lot of different stuff. I know Kyrie's sometimes at the tip of the spear with this, but it's been other stuff too. Like we just mentioned, Durant asked for a trade. Simmons, there was a whole mishigash around Simmons getting back on the court at the end last year. Like there's just, with the Harden thing, which we talked about 2 days ago, and right on down the line, like every time there's been a superstar with this team, it's been they fired the coach. It's been one thing after another over the last couple seasons. I will say, thankfully, this recent run is about as good as I can remember it. We've been doing Locked On here for what? This is our third season of
Yeah.
Nets basketball, and we had done another Nets related podcast for the 2 seasons before. This has been about as good of a run as I can remember. That was of just positivity and feel good, plus playing good, plus like everything coming out of Nets camp is good. I don't remember it going on for a long time, because there's always been something, injuries, whatever, just turmoil, all this other stuff. I'm fully leaning into the positivity here. It's been so good that I do think sometimes positivity begets positivity. So like when you can just get yourself on good footing with this stuff and see that, hey, look at like what the dividends that come from just having this be the thing. I actually think that does help the long-term thing. I don't think the Nets have ever been able to stand and get a good grip. Like there's been no purchase around this for years now. But now looking around, you can see like, hey, coach, seems like we got a good thing here, right? Vaughn looks like the guy, at least for right now. Superstars for the most part playing well. On-court numbers for some of these guys looking really good. Even the Claxton Simmons on-court stuff right now, I don't know if you look at this, they're +5 together on the season. Like who would have ever thought that? I couldn't believe it. I looked up this morning. I was like, holy cow, +5 for the season net rating. Like everything is just going. And I think once you can actually look at something and identify the positive nature of it, it's so much easier that if something does go wrong, to go back and be like, hey, look, we just had an extended run where we see that this is possible, right? And so now if something negative happens, I do wonder if the team is actually now built better to withstand something like that than they ever have been in the past. We've never had like a month-long run where the team's just been really good, right? Like I mean, they've been good.
Even the best versions of it, you go back to last year, right? So you have the protocols and mandates. So even when the team was winning some games, remember the run, Kevin Durant and the young guys. Okay, great. But there's still this thing hanging over top of the organization about what's going to happen. So even those couldn't feel good. And I think you're right. The sense of like, if you think about it, just the thing from a player perspective, and it's funny the way NBA narratives and sports narratives work too. So internally, it is, you and I've had this happen on the podcast. It's impossible. If you're a player, it's impossible almost not to be waiting for that shoe to fall, right? Waiting for the next thing to happen because we have the sample size of it. And then, but from a media narrative, I'll say, thankfully, they're ready to turn the page too, seemingly. Like, hey, when your team is winning basketball and it's playing well and it's going right, guess what? Like, you can say whatever it is, contention and in between players and everything else. But the best thing that the media loves is when it's about like high level competitive basketball and superstar players, because that drives views and clicks far better than 3, 6, a year, 2 years into dragging the same process around what's not working. Why is it going wrong? What are they going to do next? We are only a couple months removed from the prospect of blowing this up. And I think you're right. Now you have some bankable equity in that sense of, hey, if something were to come up, we actually feel like we're a pretty tight-knit group now, and we can brush past that rather than feel like it's the final thing that kind of breaks this apart.
Yeah, look, when you've been mostly the team that you want to be, and you've won 11 out of your last 12 games, right? And you have fundamental changes that have happened within the team that you can actually point to as like a lightning rod of stability, right? So is that lightning rod stability? I might have mixed metaphors there. Doesn't matter. You get it. Everyone gets it. I think at that point, that run, and when you point to clear differences that might be responsible for that run, right? Not just luck. Like you said, like the young guys, hey, everyone's just playing out of their minds. We're just kind of getting lucky, but there's also, we're waiting for see how this other thing works, right? Like when you're like, hey, we got a new coach. The players seem to like playing with each other. Durant's at just a totally different level. You got Kyrie, like when he's on the court, looking as good as ever, right? You got Simmons, right? Like all this stuff is actually working and coming around. Yeah, man, it's like so much easier to see it. It's so much,
and almost consistency. Just quickly, almost consistency, because you mentioned, we said about young guys and then playing well. That's great, but Curry, Harris, Watanabe is a veteran player by all accounts. You know, he's new to the team. Royce O'Neal, TJ Warren, veteran players. Like, I'll make the case too that this is better for the highest level guys like Kevin Durant, because the young guys playing well, that's cool. but you don't know about consistency in that. Kevin Durant feels that much more confident when he's surrounded by veteran experienced NBA players that are also playing at a high level. That's the other thing that you get to bank out of this too.
Yeah, I have one more actually point to bring up about that, because I think that there is, I think that in terms of how I'm viewing the team, especially as we like head into this holiday, like the way I'm viewing the team, I can already tell is also starting to shift in a way that is a little different for me than it has been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into that, I want to tell you about our friends over at betonline.net, your number one choice for betting info, stats, news, and analysis. If you go to BetOnline, this is egregious right now. I'm going to have to actually email the folks over at BetOnline. Oh, never mind. I clicked on the wrong thing. I was looking at this list of this is great. This would be a great read. I was looking because BetOnline has so many different things that they offer that I actually clicked on the wrong one. So they had a coaching special, and I just assumed it was Coach of the Year. And I'm scrolling. I'm like, Jock Vaughn, nowhere in sight on this list. Bet Online, pull it together. Nope, next coach fired. Jock Vaughn, not on the list. There we go.
All the way down the list. Perfect.
No, he's not even on the list. So we're good. We're good to go there. Bet Online's got that right now over on Bet Online too. Nets plus 1,200 to win the championship. They've moved up into 6th on that list. There now we know Bet Online's got this thing together. Bet Online has all of the latest odds, all the latest news for every professional and amateur league out there. They got football on the weekends, college bowl season. We're heading into that. Basketball, obviously, every night. If you love podcasts, they got those as well. Head on over to betonline.net. Use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Okay, so as we start to wrap this up here, I want to tie in your thoughts around the veterans and the play of this before we talk about what is our final wish to have around this holiday season for the Brooklyn Nets, maybe an outside body potentially coming in here. But what is the way that you think these veterans and the performances around Kevin Durant matters more than maybe it did last year in that rookie run?
It's not that it matters more, but I think that for me, I've talked about having like 2 parallel tracks of the way we view the team, right? It's like the regular season, fun to watch, and then there's this championship level group that I like always question about whether this group can get there or not, right? And I've always had to kind of separate those two, because the second one was always predicated on waiting for something to happen, waiting for this guy to come back, waiting for this to happen, waiting for this trade to happen, waiting if Nash the right coach, all this other stuff that was waiting to happen. I'm actually at a point now, I think, after watching this latest stretch, that I've melded them together where I kind of care a little less about wondering about the championship piece of it and more just about how cool it is to watch, because finally we're just getting this other version. I think the other way, it was always wanting to look off in the distance, because looking in the now was tough, right? Like looking in the present with this team has been so difficult for so long, because it was never the fully realized version. I'm realizing now that watching this fully realized version or close to it makes me think about the other thing less, because it's more fun to talk about this team in the now more. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if I'm explaining this exactly correctly.
I think so. Tell me if I round this out for you, because on the post game after the Warriors, I compared it to that Pacers game where all the backups played, and we came on and talked about, God, it was just a different energy to watch that team play like that. And it's a little bit disappointing that we haven't been able to view the fully healthy version of the team in that way. The starters. That game against the Warriors was that sensation. It was that feeling of like, hey, here come the guys that are going to be here for the season, that are going to be here come playoff time, and they're going to dumpster a team that is greatly depleted through injuries. They're going to give you one of these kind of performances that, to your point, was I get to just sit back and enjoy it. That's primarily what I did. That's what I did for that game. I sat back and I enjoyed it. And I think you're right, too. You don't have to worry, or at least I'm not as worried about, is this a dangerous playoff team? I think the way that they've performed, it's okay just to say, I'll see that when I get there.
They're good.
What I get from here to then is most likely going to be almost always really good quality basketball, competitive games, and hopefully some impressive wins.
Right, because that's the point. It's like they're good. They're a good team.
Right.
They're a good team.
They're a good team. They're a good team. Oh,
yeah, they're just a good team. And by the way, and that Warriors game, here's the other. This is the key difference too. The Warriors game wasn't a one-off. It was the 11th win in the last 12 games. It wasn't just this one-off kind of, oh, now we can see it for a second. It was like, no, we've been at this for a month now, right? Like it's been a month of this, of just really good basketball, some close wins, some nail biters in there, right? Some different kind of games. But the sample size has grown to the point where it's not like, oh, that was nice to get for a game, but let's see them consistent. No, this is the consistent part. We are in this consistent stretch of winning. And so I think that's the key difference.
So let me ask you a question then, because I think the last thing we were talking about wanting the gift for the holiday here are 3 gifts for the Brooklyn Nets. And it was about bringing in a player. You can label it stretch big. You can label it, POA, defensive guard that you feel like can help you in that area. But I'm a little bit curious over the course of this episode, the way that we talked about it. I understand we want the team to get better. And I've mentioned names, but in some ways, maybe what I actually want is for them not to need to go get that other player. And there's the world where when you look at the roster, there's some redundancies and there's guys that don't perfectly fit and they could still use something. But maybe I wouldn't hate the idea of like not needing to go make that move, not needing to put picks and players by the way and break up this good vibe energy this roster has right now to go get especially the big name, which I don't think is something either one of us believes they will do.
Yeah, okay. I'm not there yet. I still think roster upgrades because I still want the championship piece. So I'm still this isn't. I'm not gonna. They don't slap a ring on your finger for winning 11 out of 12 in November and December. So I think it's still. I always want to be part because I think ultimately the goal is to win the championship. This should be the goal of any organization. There's only one of those every year, and the Nets have the resources to go do it. So I think that should be the goal. I think that I'm willing to separate those two things. I do think upgrading the roster, if it can be done at a marginal cost, can make sense. In the end, this is just laundry. I do think and by the way, I root for the laundry hard. So it's not that, right? It's like I want a lot of different guys could wear those Nets uniforms and I'm going to root for it, right? So it's not that. But I do think if there's worlds where they can get a stretch big that can is a little switchable and can stretch the floor a little bit to give Claxton a breather or come in. Yeah, for sure. If they could get a point of attack defender, Caruso got hurt the other day. Your boy got a concussion, I think. If that can happen, I think that I'm always going to be a fan of that. Good vibes will only probably get me so far personally. Right. And and in the end, I kind of think I want the other thing, but, it's a nice spot to be in where I think at least we're in a good spot about it. But I think I'm going to stop short of saying keep the band together just because it feels good. I don't think I can go all the way there.
No, and I agree with you. And it's a bit of a softball question there for you because I think there are still those little things that you do want to work on. We obviously want to keep it mostly positive. I will just let me throw in because Doug didn't get this big reveal. Now that you know that the Orlando Magic have set that Mo Bamba first round pick and some action kind of vibes. I thought that would be also the thing that I'm glad you didn't have to be on the last episode for, because I know that must have been a red siren for you as you see the way people talk about it. The stretch big is something you want and you need. I actually think that if the Nets do accomplish that, it's when you bring up a name like Caruso or any of these players, I think that the Nets fans are going to be surprised by who the player is that actually gets brought in. Because I think a lot of these bigger names, the feast that's going to go on around the trade deadline, I won't be shocked if the Nets kind of wait and say, hey, you want to spend the big money, the big picks, the big action? Great. There's probably then still going to be teams looking to jettison some contracts and some players that the Nets may actually get a bargain on someone to help fill out a roster need.
Yeah, I saw that Bamba thing, and I was like, as someone that has read the word name Mo Bamba more times than probably Mo Bamba's family has over the last 2 months, just between the YouTube chat and the comments and my own Twitter feed, the name Mo Bamba, 10,000 times. I have no idea. The number is so high. When I saw that, I was like, well, now this is going to put it in right into the realistic camp for everybody because 2 second-round picks or something like that is going to be. Now, by the way, I'd probably do that too. It's fine. I think that's an acceptable cost. I don't know about the first. I don't know. We'll get as we get closer to the trade deadline. Throwing in one of the very few first round picks that they still have for Mo Bamba, I think would be a bridge too far for me. But that's maybe not seeing the forest for the trees. I'm not sure. Okay, we are going to get out of here. A couple programming notes here. We are going to be live following the Friday night game. Which if you're listening now is against Milwaukee. So we're going to be going live on YouTube following that game. So make sure you subscribe over on YouTube because you can jump on with us. The podcast for that game will not go up until Monday, the 26th. So if you want to be able to hear that sooner, go and subscribe over on Locked On Nets YouTube. We will be broadcasting after the game. That thing will be up all weekend, but there's the podcast on the feed. It won't go up till Monday because they don't play again until Monday. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets over at YouTube.
And guess what, friends? 4K, baby.
We did it? Oh, nice.
We did it.
Sorry to be subdued. I was clicking over. Nice. Thanks. Let me just say this real quick. We've been trying to get to 4,000 subscribers. We were pretty sure we were going to get there. 4,000 subscribers to YouTube before we turned over the new year, and we made it easily. Really appreciate everyone that's jumped over and listened on YouTube, comments on YouTube, jumped in for the live stuff. Like, it's all been really, really great, and we just much appreciated. So the one gift we wanted, we got well ahead of the holiday.
My elation was slightly confused by other audio playing in the background for me, but I powered through because I'm a professional. And by the way, friends, maybe the holidays and sports fandom doesn't come from a store. No, maybe the holiday spirit perhaps means just a little bit more. The Grinch.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets. R.I.P. He's probably still alive. All right, we'll be back again. We'll be back again next week, talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball. Enjoy the holiday, everybody.